You know what a globalist is? A globalist is a person that wants the globe to do well, frankly, not caring about our country so much. And you know what? We can't have that. You know, they have a word. It sort of became old-fashioned. It's called a nationalist. And I say, really, we're not supposed to use that word. You know what I am? I'm a nationalist, okay? I'm a nationalist. National. Nothing more. Use that word.
There was a tweet making the rounds a few months back, talking about an international alliance of nationalists. An international alliance of nationalists. This is as absurd as Twitter user Alexandra Scarin pointed out as when the Flat Earth Society announced that they have members all over the globe. And for a few hours, we all laughed at the stupidity of the right. But all the while, they actually did it. During 2018, Steve Bannon, Trump's former chief strategist, founding member of Breitbart News and, worst of all, investor in Seinfeld, toured Europe getting support from and supporting in turn such figures as Le Pen in France, Salvini in Italy, Modrikamen in Belgium, Wilders in the Netherlands, and Orban in Hungary. And now, we could again have a bit of a laugh pointing out that this network of Eurosceptic conservatives targets the upcoming elections for the European Parliament. But while we're giggling at their hypocrisy and apparent absurdity, they'd be in an even better position to use the resources of the European Union and further their nationalist agenda at home. Let's not forget that Nigel Farage, former leader of UKIP and one of the figures behind Brexit, is still a member of the European Parliament. So maybe we don't actually understand what nationalism is. Now, I could follow any number of online courses on political theory from real universities, but I don't have the time to become a whole semester smarter. I'm a woodland critter running away from deforestation. All I have is 5 minutes to become smarter. And that's where this fracking-funded freak show of a channel comes in. Tell me, PragerU professor, what is nationalism?
Nationalism is not about racism, and it isn't about isolationism. Nationalism is the opposite of imperialism, or globalism, or transnationalism. Adolf Hitler was no nationalist.
Is this what 5 Minutes Smarter feels like? Because I feel like I've listened to a lot of things that nationalism isn't, and some claims that are downright beguiling. Imperialism, globalism, and transnationalism are all the same thing. Henry VIII was the first nationalist because he just couldn't stop killing his wives. Our strongest loyalties are to our families and not to the internet people we form parasocial relationships with by constantly listening to their YouTube videos. But hey, it was a nice old man speaking with authority, with pretty motion graphics going on in the background, flashing so quickly that we might not even notice how all the boundary-respecting nationalist European countries actually had colonial empires of their own. Empires that other nationalists like Gandhi fought against. Almost as if conservatism is somehow inherently disingenuous and contradictory. There are, though, some things that nationalism seems to be about. In nationalism, people want to preserve the way of life they and their ancestors built up over centuries, the way of life they believe is best. By building
good borders.
And while a border can be many, many things, here we're looking at one particular framing of it. The border as fence. A good fence. Clearly demarcated, controlled, more regulated than a woman's body in a republican state. In this view, the EU has bad borders, and that's one of the reasons for Brexit. But this kind of border isn't an abstract thing like a line on a map. It doesn't become a border by placing an obstacle like the metaphorical fence, or a moat, or a wall. People can jump over fences, they can traverse moats, both dig under and climb over walls. In fact, we're so good at those things that we've turned them into Olympic sports and take national pride in challenging ourselves to see who can do them the fastest. The good fence turns into a border when people join in the common defense and willingly obey laws. The border is truly a border when it's patrolled, surveilled, and defended by people willing to use force to keep people from crossing it. Now, people don't eagerly submit themselves to that, not unless they feel like they have something to defend. Which of course implies that there are forces they need to defend it from. To go to the border gun in hand and drone overhead day in and day out ready to detain or shoot people who cross it goes beyond just doing your job. Since how dedicated are you at your job? You're probably watching this at work because you sure as hell aren't sacrificing your precious free time to watch us internet weirdos make videos. So the good border implies a duty. The duty to protect the nation against an enemy. The very existence of a border implies some skepticism towards those beyond it. The better the border, the stronger this skepticism has to be justified, in a way that feeds into itself through rhetoric and fearmongering and propaganda. Then there are mechanisms that search for the people who slipped through the cracks and seek to expose them. And that not only comes with a whole other apparatus of control and social conditioning, but it also turns that skepticism inwards. Anything that deviates from the way of life we and our ancestors built up over centuries becomes anti-national, which means the creation of people who belong and people who don't. And that's something that can very quickly turn paranoid. To my mind, this wouldn't make for very neighborly behavior. But wait, says PragerU Professor Man. Apparently, nationalism isn't isolationist because nations can trade with each other. And the fenced neighborhood metaphor really kind of breaks up here, because countries don't trade with each other in the way Steve might go up to the house down the road and borrow a cup of sugar, and they'd go by Laura's place to borrow her power tools. The Italian student who buys a Gucci shirt from an outlet doesn't trade with the Romanian textile worker who sewed it, who in turn didn't trade with the Chinese cotton mill worker from where they got the cloth, who in turn doesn't trade with the Indian cotton picker. There are companies, multinational companies, that actually trade with one another. And in some cases, they don't even trade that much, because a sizable part of the supply chain is more or less in their hands. This creates a weird dynamic. Goods and services are global, they're supplied from all around the world, but people should stay in one place. What if somebody doesn't want to fit into the so-called ancestral way of life? What if they don't want to be a cotton picker or a seamstress, and they just want a better life for themselves, or simply a different life? In what way is the nation free to chart its own independent course and pursue its interests if the people inside it cannot? What is a nation within this view of the world if not a stopping point on a giant assembly line with all its productive energies focused towards that goal? I'm not exaggerating or being poetic. For example, during the interwar period, Romania developed the mostly internal nickname of the granary of Europe. Romania's grain production was mediocre, and it seems that the name originated thanks to the numerous ports on the Danube, but still. The name stuck and grew in the internal mythology, being emblematic for all sorts of conflicts, both internal and external, over their ancestral agrarian way of life and how to best honor it and maintain it. All this while the Romanian rural population suffered from poverty, lack of access to education, sanitation, electricity, or healthcare. And for the most part, continues to suffer to various degrees, opting to abandon the way of life they and their ancestors built over centuries in pursuit of, a life. To whose benefit would they and many other peoples be affixed inside the nation? Not only in the nation as a country, as a geographical enclosure, but also as an identity and ancestral way of life. A naive answer following my assembly line metaphor would be that if it benefits anyone, it would have to be the nations at the end of the assembly line, since they consume the end product, or service. But what does it mean to benefit a nation? I think we'll find some sort of answer in a progression I've mocked before. Our strongest loyalties are to those who are closest to us, to our family, then the larger community or tribe, and finally to the nation. But isn't the jump from community to nation a bit strained? The sense of belonging you find in a community comes from the recognition that you share common goals and interests with the people inside it. You don't need flags, hymns, and constitutions to be a part of the community, and inasmuch as they can depend on a place or territory, that place is not exclusive to them. Communities can be virtual, many physical communities can overlap on the same place, and even localized communities do find unity with other communities of their kind from all over the world. It becomes clear that a nation isn't the natural progression of a community. A nation is forcing various communities, many of them indifferent to one another, some of them at odds with each other, to trade in their loyalties towards what made the people commune in the first place in exchange for broader common territoriality that they didn't ask for, didn't need, and sometimes even encumbers them. So it's hard to say that a nation can wholly benefit. Various communities inside it do benefit, while the whole arrangement makes many others feel disenfranchised as the control over their well-being is dissipated inside the aggregate of the nation. Yoram Hazony justifies the Brexit for PragerU by saying that the common people wrestled back control from the elites. This is sleight of hand, since Brexit was started by some of the poshest people that poshed on this poshing earth. And the common people were sold the idea that the immigrants are those that ruin their communities by, among other things, stealing their jobs.
There are some foreigners that are coming over and taking our jobs, yeah, and not even working. And they're working.
They take our jobs if they're not working.
Because they do it. They do it. Simple as that.
But factories don't close in Birmingham because of, Romanian and Bulgarian construction workers. They close because it benefits the nation to move the production in a country whose ancestral way of life is to manufacture MG SUVs. Raising up ever taller walls won't actually give control back to people. They'll just demarcate what each country is good for in an inevitably and irrevocably global system. Attempts at fencing off do nothing but distract us from who is actually causing the ills we suffer. But freedom does not accept diminishing. A common life cannot be retroactively undone, solidarity built over generations can't be forgotten, and nationalism will not be making a comeback. Thanks a lot for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, do consider sharing it. Send it to your friends, post it on Reddit, mail it to your 3rd grade teacher. For more critical takes made by cartoon rodents, make sure to subscribe to our channel and maybe even hit that little bell button so you get the videos firsthand. I'll see you in the next one.